We have a very lively discussion here. We're talking about the Hispanic vote. What I'm gathering here is that on a national level, Democrats are saying we don't need Florida. Joe Biden didn't need Florida in 2020, doesn't need Florida in 2024. Florida is a red state, folks, and there is a possibility that Miami-Dade County could go red this year, and I've been around for a long time, and I don't remember that happening in a presidential election in a while, but we're going to talk more about that. Let me reintroduce our panelists, our 5 panelists. Our former Republican congressional candidate, Irina Villarino, Democratic strategist, Jose Parra, political science professor, Eduardo Gamarra from FIU, radio host, Inosca Perez Castellon, and Democratic pollster, Fernand Amandi. We also have several journalists joining us this evening, and we have Jenny Padura from Univision 23. We have David Smiley, the political editor of the Miami Herald. Go ahead, David.
As we stand today, abortion may or may not be on the ballot in Florida. How does that influence Hispanic voters in Miami-Dade County and Florida, if at all?
Well, look, I think this is an issue that Hispanics have shown that they're very interested in, and at least according to the polling I've done, both in Miami-Dade and in Florida, Hispanics, despite their personal reservations that they may have about whether or not they personally want to engage in the procedure or not, they do not feel that the government should dictate that decision. That's why overwhelmingly Hispanics are in favor of restoring Roe versus Wade. They're in favor of this constitutional amendment. I think if it's on the ballot, I think it will pass. I think it will pass overwhelmingly, and I think it'll pass with a majority support of Hispanics, both in Miami-Dade and Hispanics across the state.
Professor, what did the survey find as far as how Hispanics feel about the abortion issue?
Pretty much what Fernand has said, but I think there's an important caveat that needs to be mentioned. We were very concerned about misinformation or disinformation. In other words, purposive information aimed at changing a particular point of view. And what we found, for example, is we asked the question, what percentage of abortions are conducted after 12 weeks? Because a lot of the messaging, particularly from one side of the political spectrum, has been that you can abort until the time of birth, right? Yet, when we asked Hispanics this nationwide, right, very few knew that only 1% of abortions actually happen after 12 weeks. And so when you have this overwhelming messaging that you can abort until the day in which the child is supposed to be born, that creates a different dynamic, right? And that's where I think, many of the things that we're trying to get our grip around is how disinformation affects the way in which Hispanics vote.
Let me say something. People not necessarily know that poll or those results, but they're looking at Democrats protesting all over, saying that they want to be able to have an abortion until the 9th month. And that's what stays on their mind. When you see people protesting, they don't want anybody to tell them when they can have the abortion. And that's again, it goes back to perception. It's not about disinformation. It's about that if they don't know the facts, nobody's telling them the contrary.
Is that really fair? Is that really fair that Democrats want abortion until 9 months?
I'm saying when you see a protest of women asking for abortion, saying that it's their body and they can have it up to the 9 months, who tells them that they can't do different?
Can you name the protest?
Okay. We have another question, guys, from Jenny Padura from Univision. Jenny.
And this, I would like Professor Gamarra's input. Hispanic voters have historically been less likely to turn out than other demographic groups, in part because of a significant portion is younger than eligible voters overall. What do you think is going to motivate them to vote this November?
Motivate young voters.
Young voters.
Right.
Boy, that's a really tough question to answer because one of the things that we find, and at the university, for example, students you think that they're motivated. They register to vote, but then when election time comes, we don't see that turnout that we'd like to see. And this is sort of happening nationally. But I think there are issues, and Fernand, correct me if I'm wrong, there are issues that tend to mobilize younger voters more. Abortion may be one of them, right? And we know from 2022 that there was a larger turnout in certain areas, in areas where abortion was on the ballot, where younger people tended to turn out more. So How do we motivate young voters? That's your question.
Well, historically, Professor, young people are just very unreliable voters.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
You think they're going to show up to vote, and they find a million excuses why they didn't show up. How are the Democrats reaching out to those young voters, and what are you seeing about what are you hearing from young Hispanics, Jose?
I think young Hispanics, like Professor Gamarra said, are going to turn out because of issues like abortion. If the Biden campaign communicates his message well, they will know that he was canceling student debt for college students, which is very overwhelmingly popular, not just among young people, but among Hispanics in general, upwards of 70%. So as long as they communicate all those accomplishments for young people, I think it will motivate them. And abortion is going to be not just hopefully here on the ballot, not just here in Florida, but it's going to be in Arizona and possibly in 8 other states as well, 7 other states. And when you see issues like the Alabama Supreme Court declaring that embryos are children, the issue becomes nationalized, and it affects, what young people do and what young people think at the moment of turning out. Okay. And frankly, I think Donald Trump is going to be a motivator for young people to turn out.
We have a question from our audience.
Yeah, hi. Kirk Nielsen, journalist, student of AM Talk Radio in Miami. My question is for the panel, and I'm especially interested in hearing Ninoska respond to this, is with regard to the idea that the 2020 election was stolen. What do you think is the responsible, journalistically responsible, and ethical way to handle listeners and guests who make assertions that the 2020 election was rigged and stolen, using rigged voting machines and other means, and also assertions that the 2024 election, that Democrats will also be rigging that, especially if
I've covered a lot of elections,
Donald Trump
and
loses.
sometimes people are not happy with the results. We saw the Bush election, and they declared him a winner, then they decided not, and whatever. So people are always concerned about that. What I tell my audience is that the election was certified and the president is Joe Biden. But I cannot tell a caller that calls me and says, look, I've seen a lot of elections. I went to bed and Trump was winning in certain states, and the next day he lost. They can think whatever they want. I'm not there to change their mind. What I do say is that we were all a victim, the Hispanic, and you knew because you wrote a lot of articles, you were involved in this, and so were you, of disinformation. And every time that you came up with the disinformation, you attacked the Hispanic media. You did not attack any other ethnic group, and you had the same stories transferred from one paper to the next. You had reports, you were saying everything about everybody that you wanted, and in the end, we were the ones that were disinformation. You had the
I have you on tape, by the way.
No, I have you on tape too.
Spreading
I have you on tape. You came out.
Anytime you want to listen to that, to use this misinformation,
yes,
you talk to me
out.
and I can play it for you.
No, you came out with a report and you called Univision and you called where all of the...
That's what you do when you come out with a report.
Right, and you called them and you told them that we were lying. And in the end, what happened? You had a lot of contracts with the Democratic Party and you were just a Democratic operative. So that's what you were doing. That's politics, and that is wrong. You were trying to discredit a whole community because you were doing your Democratic...
I'm racist against Hispanics. Okay, that's fresh.
But against conservatives, yes.
Oh, please. Against people who spread misinformation, I do have problems.
So what about Hunter Biden laptop? What about Hillary's report on Russia? Please.
There's a video on YouTube.
And we're the ones that are the misinformation. Come on.
There's a video on YouTube, and I urge all the Democrats in this room, and there are plenty, to watch it. Joe Biden denying the results of 2016. Jimmy Carter denying the results of 2016.
Denying the results.
What do you mean denying the results?
Denying. saying that it was an illegitimate election, that he was an illegitimate president. Hillary Clinton, no less than 5 times, came out. Hakeem Jeffries, Democratic leader.
But Hillary
Jerry
conceded.
Nader.
Hillary conceded to Trump.
He conceded.
Because I was
She
in New
conceded.
York.
She had to concede. She had to concede, and
But
then she
Donald
went
Trump
on
never
and kept on
conceded.
saying that it was interference, it was Russian collusion. Then we had the John
That's what the
Durham
intelligence
report.
services
No,
said.
it did not. And the
Yes, they
John
did.
Durham report was a testament that it was all bogus. It was all hearsay, and they had no evidence to go on. But they, like your former boss, tell a lie 100 times and it becomes a truth. It was still a lie.
But can we all be in
The
agreement?
dossier was a lie. We had John
can't-
Lewis, Dianne Feinstein, Marcia Fudge, Hillary Clinton, Sheila whatever, Barbara Lee, Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Doing what?
All claiming that the election was fraud, that it was fraudulent, that there was election interference.
Because of Russian meddling.
Right, and they had no proof.
No,
but
they were
pushed
The
saying
it.
that
intelligence
Trump's
community
election
They
was
did prove
rigged.
that
No,
the
they did
Russians
not.
did meddle in
No,
the
they
election
did
of
not. The Durham
2016.
report, which was an independent
No,
counsel,
the Durham report
it
said that there was no
false.
collusion, allegedly.
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 Yeah.
But Hillary
between them.
sold the
But
idea
that
of
the
collusion.
Russians interfered
Can we-
with the election, they did.
Can't we
Yeah.
all be in agreement that misinformation, disinformation,
100%.
conspiracy theories, whether it comes from the left or from the right,
Very damaging.
is dangerous?
And damaging, yes.
It's dangerous.
I agree.
But you know what is
And we
more
should all
dangerous?
do-
And it's more dangerous when it becomes a game for a party. It
Yes.
becomes a game for the Democratic Party to cancel the conservatives and to attack them and to discredit them. That's when it becomes dangerous.
And you're saying the other side doesn't do that?
I'm not saying they might do it or they might not do it. What I'm saying is what we all had to live through after the election.
Okay, I think Professor
It was
Gamarra
one
wanted to-
attack after
Yeah.
the other, and it was all the same circle.
Okay, go ahead.
Look, disinformation is a very serious problem. It's a very serious problem for our democracy and democracies everywhere. And the reality is that political actors across the political spectrum use it. But in recent times, what the evidence shows us and what the survey we did shows us, we tried to measure it in Inoska. We measured it, for example, with vaccines, right? Vaccines, and the disinformation on vaccines is enormous. And what we found out...
I've seen it, by the way.
And what we found, for example, is that, when you ask the question, are vaccines effective to prevent hospitalization, disease, and so on, 70% of Hispanics across the nation agree with that. But 30% don't, right?
Because maybe
And
when
then-
you get a vaccine, you're not supposed to get the disease.
Well, excuse me, but...
That's what a vaccine is
but-
for. It's
excuse
to
me.
inoculate
But-
you.
but-
It's
but-
to inoculate
but-
you against
but what
Isn't
I-
that in every poll that you take? Isn't there a certain amount of people
No,
that think
yes,
differently?
correct. But what I'm trying to tell you is that there is a group,
I mean,
a
it's
very
people.
active group, which is essentially denying that vaccines are good. And we're talking about, we didn't say COVID, we said vaccines in general.
You're alluding
And so-
to COVID.
No, I'm
You
not.
were.
We're saying...
We
No,
all get
but
vaccinated.
again,
My daughter
it's
was
like-
we happen to have a
vaccinated.
measles
We have the
infection
danger of a
this year,
measles
right?
outbreak right now
Yeah.
because some parents don't
Because
want to
of
vaccinate
illegal
their kids.
immigration, primarily. They're bringing it
No,
through the... Yes, they have.
no.
Yes, they have.
We have it in a school in Broward County where they had, 5, I think, measles cases.
And you have the Surgeon General of the state of Florida discouraging parents from getting their kids vaccinated to have a measles outbreak that hasn't happened over 100 years.
And by the way, Eliott, if illegal immigrants are bringing it in, let me just say something about Latin America eradicated measles. All right? And so if they're coming here, they're already vaccinated.
Immunized. Sergio Bustos has a
I'm
question.
sure they got the vaccination.
Again, a very
Amongst
robust debate.
education and other things.
The Hispanic vote, and I don't want to rain on the parade here, but in every election I've covered going back to the late 1980s.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Yeah, talking to the mic.
Okay, I'm sorry. Again, I don't want to rain on the Hispanic vote parade, but the Hispanic vote in every election I've covered going back to the late 1980s is touted as crucial, important, Yet, like most U.S. voters, most Hispanic voters watch elections